They thought firing me would be the end of the story. They couldn't have been more wrong. My name is Michael Grant, and 3 days ago, in the same boardroom where I had dedicated 25 years of my life, everything changed. What no one in that room knew was that the humiliation they intended for me would become the spark that turned everything upside down. It all began that Monday morning. I was standing outside the conference room, holding a bouquet of red tulips, a small gesture of welcome for our new CEO, Elena Ward. After 25 years at Meridian Corporation, I'd learned that respect mattered more than hierarchy. I wanted her first morning to feel warm, like she was joining a family. But when I stepped inside, the air shifted instantly. Elena didn't smile, didn't even glance at the flowers. She simply adjusted her tie and said, with cutting precision, "Michael Grant, your time here is over." For a few seconds, I thought it was some kind of joke. Two vice presidents sat still, their pens frozen in midair, afraid to breathe. Then Elena slid a manila envelope across the table toward me. Her voice carried cold authority. "Meridian must evolve. This company can't survive without shedding its relics." The words hit harder than I expected. 25 years of service, loyalty, and sacrifice erased with a single sentence. I stood there, flowers drooping in my hands, feeling ridiculous. I set them down, watching the petals tremble in the air-conditioned stillness. My face burned, but I didn't speak. I simply reached for the envelope, my fingers brushing against the silver pen in my pocket, the same pen I'd received on my 25th anniversary. That pen would soon mean more than any of them realized. Because what Elena didn't know, what no one knew, was that 2 days earlier, I had become Meridian's majority shareholder. That revelation began on a quiet Sunday evening. I was at home, reading, trying to distract myself from the anxiety of the company's transition. Then my phone rang, and I saw the name Richard Hale on the screen. Richard was the founder of Meridian, a legend in the business world. Even in retirement, his voice carried weight. "Michael," he said, "I need to see you." An hour later, I was sitting in his study, oak walls, leather chairs, and the smell of tobacco. He looked older but still sharp, his eyes clear and deliberate. Without much preamble, he pushed a set of documents across the desk. "It's time," he said. "I'm selling my remaining shares, 42%, to you." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I'd spent my entire career keeping this company alive, never imagining I could own it. Richard reached into his drawer and pulled out a silver pen. "This was the pen I used when Meridian was founded," he said. "Now it's yours. It represents trust and responsibility." When I asked him why me, he leaned forward and said quietly, "Because you've been loyal when others were not. You care about this company's soul, not just its profits." I signed the papers that night. Before I left, Richard gave one final instruction: keep this secret. Let people show who they really are when they think you're powerless. 2 days later, in that humiliating boardroom, I understood exactly what he meant. The following morning, I returned to my office to pack up my things. My coworkers looked away as I walked past, some ashamed, others pitying. Inside, the memories hit hard. Late-night phone calls, crisis reports, the chipped mug that had seen more sleepless nights than I could count. I even thought about the day I missed my father's funeral because a shipping disaster had nearly destroyed the company. I had told myself that saving Meridian justified the sacrifice. Now I wasn't so sure. As I packed, I received a message from an old colleague, Daniel Morris. "No one here has forgotten you, Michael. Not now, not ever." It stung, but it also reminded me that loyalty couldn't be erased by a termination letter. Meanwhile, Elena began her new reign. I heard from others how she addressed the leadership team, calling for the elimination of old infrastructure. That was her term for me, old infrastructure. She dismissed decades of experience with a few condescending words. Then, as if fate wanted to hand me a weapon, a young analyst I had once mentored sent me an audio recording from that meeting. In it, Elena's voice sneered. "Relics like Michael were anchors dragging us down." I replayed it several times, my anger cooling into something sharper: determination. She had just given me evidence of her arrogance, recorded in her own voice. By Friday, the board of directors was meeting for the first major vote under Elena's leadership. A large mahogany table dominated the executive suite. At its far end sat an empty chair, marked with a placard, "Reserved, majority shareholder." Elena tried to appear confident, telling the board that the new investor was fully aligned with her vision. The directors exchanged uneasy looks but stayed silent. Outside the frosted glass doors, I stood waiting, the silver pen in my pocket like a quiet heartbeat. I could have burst in right then, but I wanted her arrogance to reach its peak first. Let her feel invincible. As the meeting went on, I could hear her voice through the glass, smooth, commanding, utterly convinced of her dominance. She didn't know that the documents she'd received that morning already listed my name as the company's largest shareholder. When the secretary handed her the updated filings, I watched through the frosted panel as her posture faltered for just a second, but she recovered, smiling tightly. "Our new investor fully supports me," she declared. The lie was almost elegant in its desperation. Then, as she began to call for a vote, the secretary suddenly re-entered, holding her phone. "You need to see this," she said. Within seconds, every director's tablet buzzed with the same notification. Ownership update. As of Tuesday, Michael Grant holds 42% of Meridian Corporation. Effective immediately, board recognition of ownership is required. Silence swallowed the room. Chairs creaked. Eyes widened. Elena's face turned pale as the realization hit. Outside, I exhaled slowly, straightened my jacket, and opened the doors. The sound of my footsteps echoed as I walked in. No one spoke. The directors stared. Elena froze, color draining from her face. I held the silver pen in my hand, its engraved surface catching the light. Without a word, I walked to the far end of the table, to the chair marked majority shareholder. I didn't sit right away. I just stood there, meeting her eyes. She tried to speak. "This is a mistake. He was terminated. He has no standing." I cut her off gently. "Your authority ends where ownership begins." Her voice broke. The directors exchanged looks. The room shifted. They could feel who truly held the power now. I finally sat down, the chair creaking softly beneath me. I placed the same manila envelope she had once handed me on the table. Then, calmly, I said, "I do not accept the decision to terminate my employment." One of the senior directors spoke first. "For the record, I vote with Michael." Then another. Then another. The dominoes fell quietly, inevitably. Elena's face crumpled as she realized the board was slipping from her grasp. I reached into my pocket, drew out the silver pen, and placed it on the table between us. "This pen," I said, "was given to me by Richard Hale, the man who built this company. It represents trust, not ego. That's something you never understood." I signed my name on the reinstatement document. The soft scratch of ink on paper echoed through the room like a verdict. When I looked up, Elena had gone pale. The directors were already turning away from her. I leaned back in my chair. "From this moment forward, Ms. Ward," I said evenly, "you report directly to me." For a few seconds, no one breathed. Then, quietly, one director began to clap. Another joined in. The applause wasn't loud, but it carried a kind of weary relief. Justice had returned. Elena said nothing. Her silence was louder than any protest. I picked up the pen and slipped it back into my pocket. I felt the weight of it, the symbol of everything I had endured and reclaimed. The moment wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. About proving that loyalty and integrity still mattered in a world obsessed with appearances and speed. When I left that boardroom, I wasn't just an employee. I wasn't even a victim. I was the rightful guardian of a legacy I had helped build with every sleepless night and every quiet sacrifice. As I walked down the hallway, I passed the tulips I had once left behind. Their petals were beginning to wilt, but they still carried color, stubborn, vivid, alive. I smiled to myself. Like those flowers, I had been dismissed too soon. But some things, trust, patience, and quiet strength, never really die. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with thunder. It walks in quietly, with a silver pen in hand and the calm certainty that truth always finds its way back to the surface.